Coming to you live
from Brooks's bathroom.
We're just low budget right now, so we just film wherever. We put these odd chairs in the bathroom. Honey, we'll be done in a while.
This is actually the shower, the backsplash.
So, another episode. They didn't kick us off yet.
No,
I don't know who they is.
the overlords,
The overlords,
the YouTube masters.
Squashed our public voice. We're still out on the interwebs, spilling all kinds of crazy thoughts.
Coming live from...
I mean, Joe Rogan's getting attacked. You know, we're coming next.
Yeah,
There's surely some apology we
they
owe
really
someone.
don't like him. They really want to
It's
get rid of him.
straight up bad news right now for that poor guy, but I love it. He's got broad enough shoulders to stand on that discussion.
Yeah. Well, he also has like an incredible following that wherever he goes, people are going to follow.
Well, they're going to attack us. I mean, his deal was $100 million. Ours? You tell me. We're ready. Come on,
I'm ready for that $100 million check.
Come on, Spotify. Oh, man. So today we're going to have some discussion about a lot of things. If you've caught on, we kind of jumped to different subjects, but one being about dreaming and being careful who you dream with.
Yeah.
And I think on the notes, but I'm pretty sure I watched a recent clip of Jordan Peterson talking about be very careful who you share your dreams with, because some people don't want the best for you, or maybe won't encourage you.
That's
But
true.
you-
I forgot about that one.
Yeah,
it's
I think,
good.
right?
Yeah, that was it.
Did you have another one?
We
around the
did. We
same
were talking about
thing?
Steve Harvey said the same thing. He was like,
Oh, Steve, he's always
good
bringing
old-
some
good
type
old
of
Steve. He's all over
motivational
Instagram.
thing.
but he said the same thing. Don't be surprised when you share your dreams with others because they didn't dream it.
Yeah,
You got a God-given dream, and
Right.
they may not understand it. They may not see it.
yeah. So this is like a big point of conversation in lots of circles, especially in motivational world and self-help pieces. Is the quote, which is, "Show me the 5 people that you spend time most around, and I'll show you the man you will become." That's a
Mhm.
paraphrase of a quote, but pretty close. Fair
Mhm.
enough.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I do think there's a lot of truth to that. But we were talking, and we'll continue the discussion of what we've talked about before, about how, especially as Christians, and we intersect with that quote, I have different emotions in some ways around that. And so as we think about, show me the 5 people you spend most time around, I'll show the average. It's so true in every walk of life. A lot of the time when we see it, it's around a business discussion. So meaning like even to the extreme of, I'll show you the average income you'll make if you show me the 5 people you spend the most time around.
Yeah, I've heard
I think
that.
there's truth there, but we could even unpack it from some people have different strengths that you may be entertaining, or discussions, or friends you may be around.
Yeah, we've talked about this before where you've got somebody around you that is incredible at making money, but they're not so great at the home life side of things.
Yeah.
But you've got really good friends that are just killing it at home. They're
Right.
great husbands. They're great to their kids. Like, and even if they're average on the income side or something, there's still a lot of that can be gained out of that friendship and learning from each other and sharpening each other. And you don't have to just look at the people around you and go, who's making the highest net worth. I think that's kind of missing the mark.
Well, and I think that's where a trap a lot of people fall into, especially young entrepreneurs or business people. Their mind is centered one way. Some of it may be because they have employees underneath them, so they feel this weight of responsibility to provide for their family, their wife and kids, their employees. And so all of a sudden you blend to where everything around you is focused on, how do I make more money? Sadly, in some ways, but it's true, and it's not necessarily based in bad thought.
No,
They
it's not.
Start that discussion.
There's a lot of biblical background of working and doing the best you can with what you're given and succeeding in life.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing at all.
But
it's just not the whole thing.
exactly, and a lot of times you can spot that from a mile away. And I always think of the social media friendships. You get a friend that you hadn't seen in forever from high school, and they add you as a friend. And within about 3 minutes of hitting yes, the first response is, "Hey, how's it going?" You're like, "Oh, good. How are you?" you have time to hear about this new product that I have? I have something that will make you multimillionaire dollars and heal you from the inside out. You know, like, I mean, like, hold on.
You'll be rich in 1 month.
Hold on just
Guaranteed.
1 second.
If you just find 16,000 friends.
What is your intent for this friendship?
Yeah.
People are pretty good at spotting that. And even
Yeah.
from a Christian walk of life, you know, we just talk about sharing and pouring into people around you. And how does that friendship look? And where are you bringing to each other? But I don't want to skip over the point that there is a whole lot of truth to the average of the people that you're spending the most time with. Like, I
Yeah.
challenge you to sit and think about, who am I around the most? And I can tell you, you shouldn't find it coincidental, some of your behaviors, some of the frustrations you have, some of the outbursts you may have about certain subjects, or the opinions that you carry on things, the limiting beliefs that you'll carry.
Mhm.
And especially, you know, one big piece about this needs to be discussing vulnerabilities as well, like real, true experience in vulnerability. And I grew up I've had a great life, great childhood. It wasn't in some wealthy elite status though that I grew up. I would challenge to say it was a middle class community, in some ways lower middle class. And when I went to public school all the way through, and there's these frameworks that come into your life about how you make decisions, how you look at the world, how you look at politics. All those pieces are framed inside you. And then as I went on into business, and I had a lot of different experiences, a lot of failures, a lot of positive pieces along the way, but you fall and you grow and you find yourself, especially for me that I've lived in a few different places now, you come back to these decisions that you made. And once you look introspectively at yourself and you think about how you make the decisions, you notice, where did I get this from? Where did that come to be? Why do I do these specific things?
Mhm.
But you look at your upbringing, and you look at the friends group that you're around, and sometimes it shouldn't be a surprise. Now, that's not always a negative piece, though. For the same aspect of, there's some people, and, you know, transparently, you know, I've been blessed in life in so many ways. First of all, with health, with a healthy family, healthy kids, but also the Lord's blessed me with a good business, and with that, a lot of prosperity in a lot of different ways. And if you're not careful, one of the pitfalls of this, and one of the pitfalls of that analogy that I gave about the average of 5, is a lot of people will forget where they came from, is one of the statements, or forget the people behind them as they grow and move to these different socioeconomic groups. And to your point earlier, maybe those socioeconomic groups happen to have some more money or whatever, but they lack in many other areas.
Yeah.
And so we've just been discussing before kind of this framework of, hey, we've got these core friends like I have that have been with me for, 20, 30 years, that have known me through it all and would stand beside me no matter where I stood socioeconomic wise. It's not about that.
Yeah.
But also, as I've grown in life, there's a discussion around trying to be around other business owners that would challenge me to new levels. Like, I've been in CEO groups that have tried to push me up and try to grow a business. How does that sit? Anything that I'm saying sit with you? Where do you come from in those averages of when we think of our friends groups and especially where we live now, and some of the prosperity, I guess, that we exist around. And then as we kind of relate that to the church, is there anything that I said that jumps out at you?
Well, I guess I think about taking an account of who's around you. Maybe there are some actual relationships that you've grown past, and it's to the point where it's not healthy anymore. I guess Sarah and I, when we first got married, my wife, we went through a real bad drought of friends. Like, we had moved, we were young to get married, and the people around us were just in a different place than we were at that point in time. We had, young, Christians trying to move into our relationship with God more, trying to create our own bond in a more meaningful way. And the people around us were still young, dating around. It wasn't a good thing for us. And we really had to spend a year almost asking God, like, can you put those right people in our lives. Like it, you talk about when you have success and when you have good business, and a lot of people kind of flock to you,
Yeah.
or it can be that way because they see the money
Yeah.
and they see other things. But maybe there's a place, and I know I've been in that place where we had to really seek God out for those friend groups. Even when we moved here, actually, the friends that God gave us, we moved down here with, and then they moved somewhere else, and we had to kind of start all over again and
Sure.
get back and ask God for those people. And He is really blessed with people like you that really have poured into me in a great way. But we've got other incredible friends that we've got and that we've met at a church some are just incredible musicians and have
Sure.
pushed us in that area. Some are incredible with their family and has really challenged me in that area where
Right.
I hear what they're doing and I'm like, man,
Yeah.
why haven't I thought about that with my own kids?
Yeah.
So I think, like you said, show me the people that are around you. I think there's times where maybe you really do have to ask God,
Mm.
hey, there's nobody around me that's healthy and I don't know where to find, can you help me? And part of that practically is just getting in a good church. There's always going to
Yeah.
be people that are looking to better themselves,
Yeah.
generally speaking, in there. But there may be those times where you're saying, hey, I need people to come alongside me. Maybe there's those older people where we talked about discipleship the other day. But maybe it's people that are in the same field or in the same like life point as you,
Yep.
And,
Well, and I think from a perspective of it's not a terrible thing just to evaluate who you're spending your time
Yeah.
with. And it's not to say you better look because there's probably some terrible people that you need to just cut out of your life. That's not the point. But it is just trying to say, hey, who's around me? Who do I spend most of my time with? Are they healthy relationships? Are there some tendencies in these people that you love deeply that may also have some rough spots, and that rough spot's rubbing off on you
yeah,
and how you react? Gary Vaynerchuk's one that I've seen a lot, pretty rough in the vocabulary department at
Yeah.
times. But he talks about how it's not always just about making a certain amount of money. He's put himself out there to say he's going to buy the New York Jets one day. Like he's got this top statement. He's not unabashed to say it. He kind of sets his goal, and this is what he's working towards: is to buy the New York Jets. And he's just like a normal dude. I think we might have talked about him before. I know we've talked about him. I don't know if we talked about him on podcasts.
little side note, whoever's going to sell him the Jets, knowing that this is his life goal, is really going to charge a lot of money.
Yeah, actually knowing him and watching him buy stuff at garage sales, I have a confidence of all people he can put it out there and still work the price down.
Still get the deal.
Oh yeah, but he talks about how people are critical of like, well, it's just about making more money and more stuff. And he says, look, man, money isn't happiness. He says, I've got buddies that work a 9-to-5 job and they make a decent salary, but guess what? They go home at 5:00. They leave their work at work. They coach their kids' little league baseball teams, and life is fantastic. And those are some of my best friends that I go to every New York Jets games with. It's not necessarily some peer level of some mogul that has to be on a peer level with me.
Yeah.
And so I think we always have to keep that perspective in mind, but also, hold on, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, I just thought about when you're talking about like the moguls and stuff, there's some level where a lot of them are actually really depressed.
Yeah.
Because you and I guess this is my mindset. You get to that point of thinking like, this is what's going to make me happy. I'm going to get up there. I'm going to have all the things and all the stuff. And then you get there and you're like, wait, no, I'm still not happy. Like
Yeah.
there's this fundamental thing, missing. And obviously a lot of times it's a relationship with God, but there's something to be said too about the people around you. Say it's lonely at the top kind of a thing. And,
Well,
and
there's,
there's
the
got to
saying-
be a focus on your core group of people that are around you that you're
Yeah.
digging in with.
Happiness is
and
an
doing
inside
life with.
job.
Yeah.
So it means it's got to come from inside of you. Unhappy people will be unhappy no matter what kind of car they're driving or house they're in.
Yeah.
Unhappiness will follow them regardless of that. Some people dupe themselves into believing if I just get this, then the joy would come.
Yes.
But that's not where joy's found. But also, I do think there needs to be a discussion about, which you kind of referenced, a quote from Stephen Furtick. Is that right?
Yeah. We're
About,
talking about him and where he.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I watched a podcast a while ago. Actually, it was before I moved here a couple of years ago. And he talked about how he started the church and his journey through that. And he felt like God laid it on his heart to, start Elevation, which now we know is one of the biggest, most impactful churches in the world. But at the time, everybody he told about this basically said, "You're crazy. This is not something you should do. Like, what are you doing? This is dumb." And he finally, I don't remember who it was, but he had one person in his life that supported him. And he talked about that. He said, if I didn't have that person, I probably wouldn't have started the church and done what I did. But he, instead of saying you're crazy, there's all these challenges, all these things, he said, that's amazing. That's awesome that God's puts out in your heart.
Yeah.
How do I help? Like what can we do to do that?
Sure.
And it's become this incredible thing. So just as much as we talked about this at the beginning, but the dream is so important, but who you dream with and who you dream around and those people around you are so critical.
Yeah.
I think that's a humongous aspect of show me who you become is if the people around you can dream with you and help you to dream into that next phase.
Well, and creativity breeds creativity. That's what I love. If you've ever been around like, you worked for a while, one of those open workspace environments. It was a little more like rental space, but I've been in some of these in bigger communities where it's creators and business starters of businesses and entrepreneurs that are in these think tanks together. That's what it becomes. And it's this breeding ground of energy that pushes each other and is thinking, flowing creatively. I think about being from a music perspective with other people that are talented musically, how really cool ideas just flow when you're with those other people.
I've been part of those startup conversations, quite a bit of startups. And that's the most fun thing to me is when you get everybody in the room and they're so passionate, so excited, they're throwing ideas out, and it's just this creative juice fuel that is like a blast at the beginning of a business.
And so that's important in life, because the cool part about with social media and digital and internet is you don't have to just have communication with the people in your town. I can't imagine when it was just limited to who you lived in town with. That's all you could discuss with, because you had to wait on the Pony Express to come grab your mail and take it somewhere else to be able to have communication. You can find groups and think tanks about whatever you want to do anywhere. And that's my encouragement to my younger self, if they were asking and doubting, is who are you talking to? Who are you challenging yourself with? Are you letting people's limiting beliefs of themselves bleed into you? And are you seeking out mentors that you could go work around and spend time with?
Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah.
I think you were telling me last week of your younger self when you were just starting to get into the business of insurance.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the encouragement I would give other people is don't be scared to ask questions, and don't be scared to go talk to people above your weight class and ask them questions. And so like when I first started in insurance, I read this book that this insurance agent had written about business and about insurance, and nerdy enough, I was in that. It was so nice because it was a book totally dedicated to just my industry. And he talked about this agency he was building and how big it was going to be and the premium volume that he had and was growing to. And it was just hundreds of times bigger than the average in my industry. And so most people, when they saw that, it was like, okay, this guy's crazy. If you talked about any discussions around that type of level, you would think it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, man, I'm going to go talk to this guy. I'm 25, and I'm just call the guy's office and it's like, hey, is he available? And his assistant / gatekeeper's like, no, he's not available. And it's like, when will he be available? Is he going to be coming back soon? Can I leave my phone number? And I swear I got on a first name basis with this lady. She knew me. I could call, and let's say her name is Cindy. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Brooks.
It's still no.
He still have any availability? Is there a chance that we could get that together? And sure enough, it worked out, and he was available. And I was like, I'll be there. I mean, I was no excuses. Flew myself down and was in his office. And I tell you what, we spent probably 5 hours together on a work day. I got in there mid-morning, let him get his stuff done. He took me to lunch where his family was at, and I was able to sit because he was working as I was asking him questions. And on the plane there, I was asking writing down all the questions I wanted to have. And I tell you what, you'd be surprised at how willing he was to pour into me. It wasn't about the willingness. It was just about his time value of money. And he could honestly have charged me an arm and a leg for that time, but he didn't. He saw, I think, an opportunity, maybe a younger self, and poured into me. And I'm big on that. And that's why I'm so passionate about the discussion you brought up to say about be careful who you dream with, because you not only do you don't need people to squash your dreams, but you need it to be fertilized, if you will, and to grow. Meaning, if you've got a dream, I'm big on, if you want a new car, I don't want to hear you say you want a new car. I want to hear what year, make, model, what color is it, what color is the interior, what does it smell like on the inside? Does it have is the blinker loud or quiet? Does the volume knob turn over here? Where's the lights at? I want you to be able to sit in that car and tell me every aspect like you're sitting in it today. And that's what I did. I went and saw this agency, and there was aspects of it that weren't for me necessarily and how his business was formed, but that didn't matter. I was able to just feed off this energy. And I came back, and now it was a little over a decade later, which I would have hoped that would have been something I would have accomplished by 55 or 60 years old, meaning 30, 40 years. But about a decade later, we were basically at the volume that he had grown his agency to. And you look back, and it's just kind of like osmosis. You're around it, you see it, you feel it. And us as humans are intelligent enough to be able to morph that dream into reality if it becomes sticky enough. But you got to have a dream, like talking about dreamers, Stephen Furtick and everything. His dream had to be so sticky that when he had the failures, which are going to come, I could talk, and we will over more podcasts about my failures. When they come, you got to have a strong enough dream to pick you back up. Because if it's not potent enough, you'll stay down. And that's where I think it comes to even this mock interview I saw of where this local reporter was interviewing Noah as he was building the ark. And she was kind of jokingly, almost like a White House, press interview, mocking him, underneath him about what he was doing, this crazy dream he had. If he didn't have the stick, if he didn't have the word from the Lord that he would maintain, he could have never maintained that dream. And as we've talked about before, well, we're probably typically not going to have God in the same way Noah did tell us all those details, but through scripture and reading and the Holy Spirit, we can have that similar voice in our life. As you said, plant it on your heart. And what I loved you referenced earlier is how he had this dream, and we know it today and we kind of joke, we have the ability of hindsight. And so many people, the most creative businesses of the world that are being created right now, we have no hindsight on. And some will fail, but some will be blaring successes. And so if you're listening to this podcast, one of my biggest challenges is, even if you don't feel the call to dream that big or push, challenge yourself when you hear other people dream that may be outside of the realm of what you're used to hearing. And are you a positive voice or a negative voice in them? Now, if that's your child or whatever, or you feel like that's a child or a close enough family member, yes, it's okay to ask hard questions. If someone's forming a dream, they got to be able to answer the hard questions. Yeah. But it isn't I wouldn't try this is how you'll fail. It may be, hey, well, have you thought about this? What are you going to do in this situation? What's your plan for this? It paranoids me because how old are your kids?
5 and 2.
5 and 2, and 9 and 11. And we think about this limited amount of time we have with them and how fast that goes and how we form into them and pour in them to be amazing human beings. And we've talked about before, maybe they're not creators of big companies to change the world. Maybe they're different parts or roles. Maybe they're pouring into other people in other ways. And that's okay. But I also want them to be able to feel like they have an inner voice inside them that didn't tell them you couldn't do something or it was limiting. A lot of people, actually, I just saw a video. It was Kanye West that was talking in an interview of a guy that's like to a interesting level of extreme belief in himself and self-confidence.
Yeah.
Talked about how he grew up in a household that never told him that he was incapable of doing something. And I'm not saying not disciplining our children, not crafting good humans, but he never was in a household that told him he was incapable of accomplishing something that his goal was set on. And that needs to start with yourself. What's your self-talk? If you're talking with the Lord, what are your prayers like? What are your motivations behind your prayers, first of all? Yeah. And are they of God? But if your heart's in the right place, maybe you just need to be open to the idea that you might actually could succeed at something. And then surrounding yourself with people that help push that dream along. We're sitting doing something right now that's in some way a dream. Could it be a Joe Rogan podcast?
We'll see where it goes.
Statistics aren't in our favor, but I tell you what, we're learning a whole lot about on our episode 2 being audio only because the cameras broke out because we didn't pay attention to the cameras going dead. On that together, we learn stuff, and that tangible experience, I'm on a rant here and I'll wrap it and go to the next discussion point, but I just am so passionate about how are people dreaming and then are they around it. The other quote that I hear a lot, Tony Robbins, ding, I've said this before, I referenced him, proximity's power. That's a business quote a lot of times to where there's an idea in the business world to literally pay to play, like show up, be in rooms where wealthy people are and business people are to try to have time around them and share energy. Now, from a Christian aspect, it irks me in some ways because it's like, and it just feels icky.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you're buying friendships.
Yeah.
But I've been in some of those rooms as well through business and other ways that under invitation. And I will say that sometimes it's through that payment of that time to spend in that motivational event that you find people that you're like-minded to. And because you're in that room together, you find this friendship that's not about money, but you're pouring into each other and growing each other. And we were talking about the idea of proximity's power. How did that hit you when you heard that or what we were talking about?
Well, I'm just thinking now, rarely does anything get done by yourself.
Yeah.
There's, we were talking about something this morning, working on something. There's no way I could get this done by myself. Like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It surrounding yourself with the right people is just as important in the aspect of getting the dream done. God can lay a dream on your heart, and if you got the wrong people around you, not only could they shoot it down, but they're not going to help you lift up and get to the next level. And I think we talked a lot about this last week. We hear this term a lot in the church, like discipleship and being disciples. And, I've grown up with that and not really understood, like, what does it mean to be a disciple? Like, what does it mean to disciple others?
Yeah.
And just recently, like digging in a little bit more and trying to understand the hard work of discipleship and the hard work of digging in with the people around you, being vulnerable with the people around you, having that human element moment where you're pouring into each other and growing each other. And you made a good point that I think of it like almost as a friendship, but it could be thought of as a mentorship too, of somebody that's pouring into you that's really good in an aspect of something that you're not. But what are your thoughts around that, about discipleship? And
well, I mean,
what
it
that
started
really
when we
means?
talked about that is Jesus and the 12 apostles. I say that right. I always mix up the two words.
Disciples.
The 12 disciples, the 12 apostles.
Disciples
they became apostles.
Tell
you guys, and it just
we're theologians around here.
Yeah. Well, he called his disciples, and I've always looked at it from that aspect of Jesus's relationship to them.
Yeah.
And what did the disciples have to pour into Jesus? Was it a give or a take? Because we had a perfect human being that they were discussing with. So I would challenge, how did that work? It wasn't, Jesus didn't need them to get his job done. He chose them in order to plant something that would grow and build.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, I would say it is a mentorship. Jesus' relationship with them was a mentorship, but their time was together all the time. They literally were traveling together in their years of his ministry. And so they were seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly with each other. And so I think it was important in that discipleship that they were seeing the rough sides, the not so pretty elements of each other. And that was sharpening each other to grow because they were on path and on course towards a common goal. And they had their mentor there to hold them accountable. Yeah. That's some of the pieces of would it be discipleship or just friendship if you're with just buddies that they don't care where you go and you don't care where they go. I don't know if I'd call it discipleship.
I wouldn't call that. Yeah, I wouldn't call that discipleship either. But and Jesus modeled it perfectly because he's the perfect human and model, but none of us are perfect, right?
Right.
So there's got to be elements.
We don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, unfortunately,
to talk next to Jesus.
To be next to Jesus, or to be perfect. Form. Yeah. So there's things we disciple others in that we're really good at and we excel at and are really good from that perspective, but they may be just doing that's why I think of it as friendship sometimes. They may be pouring into us in an area that we're really needing help with and seeing like how they're a leader and from that perspective. Yeah.
And again, I go back to the vantage point we do have over the disciples is we have his written word. We have it in book form in the Bible, and we have the Holy Spirit. as well within us. And we don't need to, again, I have a habit of like, yeah, they were with Jesus, but we have his written word. They did not have, they wrote it later and put that together. But in the form that we have his written word and the relationship that we bear with him. And so,
But I think of like the time element, that he spent so much time with these 12
yeah,
people. I wrote here, what did Jesus do? He constantly poured into them. He saw their flaws. He corrected them. He heard them. He ate with them, and he loved them dearly.
yeah,
And discipling others is hard work. It's time consuming. It's not a surfacey quote thing that you just send them. Here's the thing. You're all going to get better. It's really digging in
and
to
as
the
I'm
human
thinking
element in an insecure level.
and I'm thinking out loud about it. I just keep coming back to the idea that you need to, in a way, compartmentalize these relationships to know who is the answer for those things. I
think
have
it's a
certain
good
people
point.
that I look to as mentors.
Yeah.
And we do have some friendship that we built through the mentorship. But at the end of the day, it was formed and still goes back to a mentorship. Who are the mentors in your life? Who do you look to ask and you trust their advice for in certain areas? And it could be, again, in parenting versus money. But you need to have a list of those mentors. And then it could be, what I love about a great mentoring situation sometimes is 1-to-1, and I have those 1-to-1 relationships, but it's nice when it's 1-to-3, 1-to-5, 1-to-7, 1-to-20. So you have the peers that are you're both mentoring, you're all mentoring underneath the same mentor. So you can glean off each other aspects that they saw, plus you can cheer each other on the path that you're together. I think it's important
That's
to
a good point.
your fellow mentees in that program or in that discipleship. And then maybe you have friendships, and you don't want to get rid of the friendships, but you got to remember, maybe they're just friendships, and you have to be able to mentally say, hey, I love this person to death, but I know that if I follow them down this road, or if I talk to them about this idea, it's probably not the person I need to talk to on that subject.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I get rid of them and don't hang out with them.
Yeah.
But they're in my friendship category.
Having the discernment of the people
They're not
around
in my
you.
discipleship category. They're not in my mentorship category. And truly thinking about it. I'm a big writer. Write it down. Put your thoughts down. Put it into words. Put it into action. You would challenge. I'm not a big writer. I'm a big orator that would love someone else to write it for me. But I think that was important. And I obviously, we all as Christians, as we grow in relationship and faith, I always find myself wondering, what was it like with Jesus and how that relationship was. And then I giggle because I think about how I'd be like, Lord, it's lunchtime. Do you want to have fish or chicken? And Jesus would say, there were 4 men walking down the road. One went this way. There was a fish that jumped out of the water, and a chicken came out of a house. And all of a sudden, he'll break into a parable. I'm like, Lord, I just need to know, did you want chicken? They always just giggle at the parables of the relationship. Like, my goodness, Lord, I just wanted to know, how did that come to be? I don't know. Christian side humor. Hang with us here. But yeah, where are we as Christians in our relationships? And also we've kind of talked about is being careful when we're in the church about, we have businesses and we have our Christian relationships, and careful as we mix those two.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of discussion in the Bible about making sure if you go into partnerships with things that it is equally yoked and you are on the same page. So there's a discussion about actually operating in business in the Christian community, but also, again, are you opening your heart to be analyzed and to look into yourself to say, but am I doing these relationships in order to get business versus building faith together?
Yeah. Are
And
you
then
going to
as a
church?
byproduct
Are you
of it,
going to church to find clients?
hi, nice to meet you. Like the preacher says, greet somebody before you sit down. You know what? Here's my business card. It's got my contact info on it. Maybe we can have some coffee.
You come with a t-shirt that says, ask me about Amway.
You ever try this protein shake,
Yeah.
friend? But the Lord loves you, and so do I. So does Benjamin Franklin. So yeah, being really careful in the church and how you're relating with that. And that's another piece to say, hey, you're starting a business. I implore you. I mean, you always start with friends and family. If you're going to church, where are your friends and family? Probably in the church. But just to be careful, people see that from a mile away. Even as much as you try to mask it, they'll notice that. It's about building relationship and then also having faith in your dream that the Lord will help make that come to pass. Of course, I'm speaking to a business conversation. But I mean, even for me, there's a small group that we've started, and we just felt that we had an experience where we opened our house to young people that were newly married, and we had that when we first got married, and so we would try to form the same. We had 2 couples last semester, and I'd hope for this. Surely there's more people than 2 couples. We love the 2 couples, but could there be more than that? And we went through, and honestly, it was a great time to build this really close knit relationship.
Yeah.
And now we're in a season to where we may have to cut the enrollment off because there's more than we should have in a small group coming in. Did we change anything? No. Did we just try and experience and pour into people? Yes. Is God working in big ways? Absolutely. It's a very small example, but you've seen that play out in so many people's lives on grand scales, from Stephen Furtick to plant the church he did today. There was also a point that we were making to say, in God's time and when you're ready, which we've talked about that in other podcasts, but dreams take time to be prepared, right?
Yeah.
Or
there's a season.
That's right.
We talked about Joseph, right? That, God laid this dream on his heart, and there was so much time in between that and the fulfillment of it. And, I just thought that's amazing that you've got, you started with a couple, you wish maybe it was going to do more, but you still did the hard work of the discipleship, getting close to them, hearing them out, pouring into them.
Which are like family now.
Yeah, but that's contagious. It's like people are so attracted. As much as we want to put up masks and we want to put up walls and we want to hide our vulnerabilities, I think more than anything, what we really want to do is lay all that stuff down and actually find somebody we can trust that will disciple us, and laying down the vulnerability where we can actually go, hey, here's all the stuff I'm dealing with. Yeah. And I think when, I guess, so to speak, the word gets out that there's somebody that is willing to do the work of discipleship, it's like you don't find people running from it. You find people running to it. Yeah. Because I think deep down we really want to lay out our vulnerabilities and connect with other humans in that.
Yeah, and I hate that it's a personal example that we let off of to get there. I don't necessarily just say it to me to toot a horn, but just in a general frame or discussion is that, well, first of all, I love that quote that we said before, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Yeah. But then also that when we talk about proximity's power, and there's a woo-woo word which you could get to Christianity about energy, and people, energy can go in weird ways. But I still stand behind that the spirit that dwells within us is the same of the same God that Jesus that walked the earth. And for him to have been walking down the road and turned around and said, I felt power leave me because someone touched his clothing, because there was a power that was there, that I believe that we as Christians can be used by God with similar power. And I believe in a way that there's power in people, and you know what I'm talking about. When you're around that one person or those one individual, it just feels like they elicit some type of feeling. You feel better when you leave them. You just feel motivated. Or a group of people. Go back to who you dream with. There's groups of people. When you're around them, do they fill you up or do they drain you? When you go back to that list, what you're talking about, think about those friends. Do you feel
filled or
drained? Yeah, that's an important thing to notice. Doesn't mean you got rid of them. You just are aware of emotions and energy. And that's another piece of life that we need to be aware of, is how do we pray, Lord, use me in mighty ways that the energy that you have would spread to other people and it be for your glory. But also, how do we find those same people and don't be scared to ask them for more? There's another saying talking about how you never typically will be talked bad about by people above you and whatever you're trying to achieve, only people below you. And it is an important thing to say, hey, go look for mentorship of people that have already passed. Because you know what? They failed before you. They went ahead of you. They understand the failures. And they're going to be way more inclined to have forgiveness for that and pour into you. But the people that have been scared to step out of the life that they're in, a lot of times they're just intimidated by what you're trying to go do, because it's shaking them to their core and challenging their inner complacency. And so they want to be angry about it and try to keep you away from it. Those are the people that are going to criticize you more than the people that have walked that walk. There's the Teddy Roosevelt quote that a good buddy of mine always quotes, which is the man in the arena. And it's the whole idea that the man that's in the arena fighting, marred by blood, sweat, and dirt, that's the man. That's what matters. It's not about the people sitting on the outside of the arena that are criticizing how he does that or not. There's actually a funny quote also that my friend's wife just posted today saying in the Olympics, Olympics is a great example of this. We see these people that have trained all their lives to do these certain things, especially like ice skating. And they learn to do the triple quad, loops and all these things. And all of a sudden we're watching and we in a day become experts, these armchair quarterbacks of the triple,
they missed the
triple
footing.
Lutz, Yeah. And the quote said, me covered in Cheeto residue saying, should have stuck it. That is like a comedy, relevance to the man in the arena. And so that's really, I think, as we kind of wrap up today, is just challenging ourselves. Are we the man in the arena? Are we pushing ourselves? And really, as we're trying to talk these discussions through about, do we wait on God and guidance? Some of it may be God's calling you to do something and he's going to give you what you need on the path. That's faith, but you're stepping in faith.
Yeah.
He's qualifying the called.
Yeah.
So as another way of putting it is you're building the parachute on the way down. That's a crazy thing, but you jump first, build the parachute on the way down. I think Elon Musk companies in some ways have not necessarily from a Christian perspective, but ways of, hey, let's go try this. Let's go do this and figure out a way to accomplish it as we go. Yeah.
I felt challenged in that just this week when we were praying for something and felt like God hit me with like, hey, is this your source or am I your source? And I'm like, ooh,
that was heavy. Man, what'd you do to deserve that word?
I got punched in the gut on that one. I was like, man, I know the answer to that, but that's a challenging question to hit.
It is.
And I wanted to jump back for just a second. You talk about people in the energy and stuff, because I think of somebody that's walking in the Spirit and allowing the Spirit to kind of work through them, and they're seeking after God, and it's almost oozing out of them.
Yeah.
When you get around those people and your spirit just starts to kind of activate with that, and you can people of New Age call it
the universe.
Yeah, like the energies and the universe and all that stuff. But people of faith and a biblical background can recognize that like we have a same spirit man, and there's something where somebody's allowing that to walk in it, and your spirit can activate or can feel that.
Yeah, we're
and
talking about the same thing. They just don't know the faith that we know.
Exactly. Yeah, they're trying to operate in a world that without the actual God aspect of it, or Jesus aspect of it, which is dangerous.
I think that's a future podcast we'll come back to, because there's some amazing people I know that don't necessarily know the love of Christ, but are doing amazing things in the world and motivating people for peace. It's just trying for us to use some of that good information, but what I've wanted out of this is to channel it back into our Christian walk and what we do, and how we go day to day, because a lot of Christians aren't doing favors for us. And how they treat people, how they treat their neighbors and ones around us. So how do we challenge ourselves to ooze that energy of goodness that people want to follow, but step away from the mankind piece of it, which is so dangerous, of stripping people, cutting people down, and judging before we love.
Well, making yourself your own God, essentially, and taking that piece out of it.
Yeah. Or just regurgitating ugliness that we've seen in ourselves before that we are unaware of because we're not introspective enough.
Or we're so insecure about our own thing that it's like take the log out of your own eye before you take the speck out of somebody else's.
This has been a good conversation. If you're watching, we love feedback.
Yes.
Honestly, I love
comments are great.
I love hearing what you like to listen to, because we're just two guys having a conversation. And so what you gleaned out of something really helps me know where our mindsets are as we're putting stuff together. And if you've got thoughts on what we could do better, we got broad shoulders, we can take that too. But thank you, if you're at this point in the video, for being here to listen either on Spotify or on YouTube, to watch our Faces for Radio talk.
Rate, like, subscribe, smash the like button.
Woo!